The reason I say sort of beginning is that I'm not starting with the Kids of Degrassi Street series. Though it was the jumping off point for what would become Degrassi Junior High, it's not in continuity with the Degrassi franchise. Some of the players in the show would go on to act in Junior High, but under different names and characters. That's not to say I won't ever discuss it though. Like in Kids of Degrassi Street, the idea behind Junior High was to follow a group of characters in a particular age group and display real issues and situations that would come up. Sex, not having a big chest, adoption, shoplifting, things that anyone at that stage of life could experience. The series was by no means an after-school special. An episode would end, but the storylines continue, and there wasn't always a right answer given or lesson to be learned. You weren't told how to deal with these problems. Instead, you were shown that you're not the first or last person to face them, and different people will respond differently. The writers actually made a point of discussing the script with the cast and listened to suggestions they had, such as line changes to reflect how kids actually spoke, input on characters, and insight into how someone their age might see events of the episode differently from adults. It's something I'd like to see more media do so you don't end up with, "How do you do, fellow kids?" They also took inspiration from the players' lives for story ideas, as we will see throughout the series. I think one of the most important aspects of this series is that every situation is shown with a sense of severity. Learning your classmate is being abused by his father is as important as being afraid of hospitals. Everything in your life is important while you're facing it. Hindsight may recolor the events, but in the moment, your current experience is another addition to your life story. Something that added to the realism of the show was that the players weren't professionals. Some of the cast members worked on Kids of Degrassi Street, but then you had people who heard over the announcements at school that the CBC was looking for teens for some independent show. True, some of the acting doesn't turn out brilliantly, but you barely notice those instances when the characters are reacting like real people. You can imagine going to school with these kids and see yourselves in some of them. I also love how the series goes to notable lengths to establish stories that haven't even begun yet in the background of other episodes. We see two characters together who will later have sex just hanging out in the background long before their plotline starts. Snake appears to be an extra at first, but his appearance as a background character establishes his interest in music. These details are very easy to miss, but are very rewarding to find on a second viewing. One issue that does come up with having everyone as ensemble characters when they don't have speaking roles is what I'm calling the Stacy problem. You have people who are just there incidentally doing something under one name, but then a few episodes later, the same people turn up as someone totally different. The first and most notable instance of the Stacy problem is the issue's namesake. In the first episode, Ms. Avery is taking attendance for her 7th grade homeroom, and we see this girl respond to the name Stacy. In the next episode, we see Stacy Farrow is now in 8th grade and goes by the name Erica. This is a result of the writers eternally coming up with new characters and deciding to use the players for other narrative roles, and in the end is understandable. While I don't fault the show for this, it's still fun to notice Caitlin Ryan dancing with Joey Jeremiah as an 8th grader under the name Amanda. Speaking of Miss Avery, one of the best things about this show is that the adults don't all suck. It's too common in shows aimed at young folk that the adults are incompetent, ignorant, or downright evil. But here we see a teacher who can be a hard ass and take pleasure in giving tough tests while also being concerned about his students and applauding their achievements. It's also noteworthy that the adults can recognize when they are wrong and learn from their mistakes just as younger cast members do. The teens can talk to their parents about things like sex or being adopted, and the adults can have rational discussion with their kids. There will be some parents who are unreasonably restrictive, but they don't make up every parental character. These are realistic people wanting to raise their children to the best of their abilities. I've always felt that the first season of Junior High was Stephanie's season. While she isn't the main character, and we spend a considerable amount of time with her classmates as well, Stephanie has the most thought out and extensive character arc. She starts out the season very self-centered and concerned with her new image as a mature 8th grader, confusing maturity with revealing clothing, gaudy makeup, and an exclusionary view of her underclassmen. It's rather implausible that the school would let her walk around like that, but this plot hole allows for the writers to tell an interesting story. Stephanie has a vague idea of what adulthood and adult responsibility entails, which is best underlined in her running and acting as the student council president. While the position comes with a level of power, she doesn't consider how much work goes into being a figurehead, such as writing speeches and listening to all her constituents, not just those she sees as equals. Even after she becomes president, Stephanie is more interested in fun and acts as the president only when it suits her. She uses her position to seek her own goals while ignoring the consequences. As a manipulator, she also has little issue using others to get what she wants, like when she attempts to woo the school's male population into voting for her.
If I get a kiss, I'll vote for you, Steph. Promise.
Okay, so long as you promise.
Yet has learned that this has consequences, such as gaining a negative reputation with her female peers and putting distance between her best friend and herself. Her growth into maturity starts in episode 1 when she recognizes her need for Arthur's help, but doesn't conclude immediately. Stephanie is still learning how to be mature even at the end of the season, and it's clear by then she has a long way to go. Her arc also involves learning that sexual attention has benefits and dangers. While it is nice to be complimented on your style and aesthetic persona, you need to be wary of when people are valuing you completely based on sex appeal. Damon King didn't see Stephanie as a person, but more as an object of desire, which was not apparent to Stephanie until it was nearly too late.
Sweet 16. You know what, Stephanie? I think you and I have a lot in common. I really do.
It's an easy thing to mistake for true romantic interest and requires you to always be on the lookout for. I think my favorite part of this episode is Stephanie's mother's reaction to the situation. Her mom was clearly upset with Stephanie, but put that aside to help her daughter and try to turn the experience into a lesson in safety. And though Stephanie heard all this before, she was now able to contextualize what the words meant in relation to everyday life. Lucy's character illustrates a different aspect of learning to be mature. While she too hasn't reached that point yet, everything she doesn't like is fascist, Lucy wants to at least give the appearance of being adult, not only to look cool to her peers, but also as a defense mechanism. Her parents are never around, and anytime we hear them on the phone, they're always calling to say they'll be home late, leaving their daughter alone. Whenever someone questions their absence, Lucy gives excuses like, they're liberal, or I'm independent. With this, she is able to effectively hide how little interest they seem to take in their daughter, but it clearly doesn't stop Lucy from suffering. Every adult in her life appears indifferent to her, so she feels no one cares what she does. Lucy can fail the year or shoplift at the same store multiple times and she'll never face consequences. She does find that not all of her actions are lacking in negative effects, but not before hurting Vula, who does care about her. It's sad to see Lucy try to bribe Vula's friendship. She terribly needs to be loved, and this desperation will lead her into trouble in later seasons. I'm glad that Vula chooses to remain friends with Lucy, even after her shoplifting leads to her parents needing to pick her up at the police station. She's upset that her parents now see her as a criminal, but is able to see that Lucy isn't a terrible person and needs someone to be friends with because she has no one else. Speaking of Vula, she was probably the most mature and level-headed of the students. We continually see her supporting her classmates and being someone they can rely on. She even covers for Stephanie, who shows up to the school dance drunk. That's not to say Vula didn't have room to improve. Even though she was justified in her anger towards Stephanie for not being given the credit she deserved, as the season progressed, her interactions with Stephanie became vindictive. She doesn't realize that her bouts of petty revenge have gone too long and too far until she uncharacteristically calls Stephanie a sleaze. Upon reflection, Vula sees her mistake and not only apologizes, but finally forgives her best friend. Though she carried her anger longer than warranted, I'm glad this conflict wasn't resolved in the same episode it came up in. This helps to make the show seem less episodic and reflects how people actually hold grudges. Most don't take kindly to being scorned. Even
Joey F. Jeremiah. F for footwork. Joey F. Jeremiah. F for pharmacy. Joey P. Jeremiah. P for playboy. Joey D. Jeremiah. D for doctor.
has a bit of a maturity arc. In the episode The Cover-Up, Joey keeps calling his interactions with his parents' child abuse, citing his mom cleaning his room, and cutting up his favorite ratty jean jacket for a patch. After he witnesses Rick being beat up by his father and sees how such accusations can lead to serious results, like the Canadian equivalent of CPS showing up at your house, Joey has to realize that his statements are substantially overblown and should never be made in jest. While we're at it, let's take a closer look at that so-called child abuse. His parents clean his room, which is a major boundary crossing, but understandable from a parent's view. Whether it was actually messing or had a non-obvious order, we never get to see, and the parents visibly shrug it off as a concern. In the next instance, though, Joey sees that his favorite jacket was cut up to make a patch, and his mother's face turns to horror as she realizes what she just did. These things are close to even in Joey's mind, while the parents think nothing of one but take the second very seriously, and by the time they do, it's too late. It's a realistic portrayal of the different priorities and perspectives of parents and kids. I love it! As I think about it, wanting to be more adult is a bit of a theme with this season. We see how Melanie desires symbols of adulthood to the point of obsession now that she's crossed an arbitrary benchmark in her life. She wants a hickey because, to her, it means that you have a significant other, which means you go on dates. Older girls need bras, so Melanie is keen to get one as soon as she can. Her fixation on symbolism does lead her into trouble, like when she unknowingly buys faux illegal drugs from Joey P. Jeremiah because pharmacy starts with P. Learn to spell, you broomhead!
F for pharmacy.
She has no idea what she's consuming, but does so anyways because that's what you do in junior high. Speaking of things you do in junior high, let's not forget sex. From porn films that the cinema snob would review,
Swamp sex robots.
to buying condoms, Degrassi has it all. In junior high, you're old enough to know it's something you want, but might not be certain if you're ready or even how to approach the topic. You know it's something dating adults do and feel that in order to prove that you like your date, you need to go all the way, as though sex is a finishing line of a relationship. Stephanie and Wheels like each other and neither are ready for sex, but when both their friends suggest that the other is, they feel pressured into accepting that sex will likely happen. If they would have just asked each other about it directly, they probably would have found that they're both not ready yet, though it's unclear how far Stephanie would have gone with her mature persona. Probably the event most remembered about this season is Spike's pregnancy. Like Stephanie and Wheels' situation, Spike has sex with Shane so that he would like her. It's clear that neither thought pregnancy possible at the time and now are at a loss on how to deal with it. They both go through periods of denial about the entire situation, trying to find someone else to blame, and wanting to wish it all away. One of the best parts of the episode was watching the two debate their options going forward. None are shown to be better than the others, but instead all valid and worthy of consideration. They could choose to give the child up for adoption, attempt to care for them, or have an abortion. These are all big decisions and take time to consider. Spike hasn't even decided what to do by the end of the season. I love how the writers dispel the myths of pregnancy, like you can't get pregnant your first time or if you stand up immediately after, by having the adults mock them. No one is preaching about them being myths, and it's believable that these characters are naturally recognizing they're being false. Though, my favorite part was Spike's mom's reaction to learning her daughter is pregnant. As a teen mother herself, she knows she needs to be supportive of her daughter right now and put aside any anger or disappointment she's feeling. I wish that all parents could be like Spike's mom, able to both teach their children right and wrong while also recognizing when they need help, not punishment. I also love Wheels' adoptive parents. Though I think there should have been more discussion about sex rather than, you're too young, they're still looking out for Wheels and wants to keep his wishes in mind. They're open to helping him learn about his biological father and supporting a possible relationship with the two. The adoption plotline was really well timed. Wheels being adopted does seem out of nowhere, but it makes sense it wouldn't come up constantly. It's something recognized and dealt with long ago and has since become a side note. His classmates know, but it doesn't define who he is in their eyes, and the only reason Spike brings it up is because she's considering putting her baby up for adoption and wants insight to how her baby might feel about it. Wheels is past the point of seeing his adoptive parents as anything but his real parents because they're the ones who raised and cared for him. They see him as their son. This of course causes problems when Wheels' birth father tries to re-enter his life. Wheels feels that the man who gave him up is now overstepping his bounds and fears the people he sees as parents will allow him to do so. I'm glad this plotline didn't conclude in this season. There is some resolution to where Wheels is confident that his parents won't give him up and his bio dad isn't trying to take over for them, but Wheels still needs time to get used to the situation. The door is open for the biological father and son to have a relationship, but Wheels isn't ready for that yet. Arthur and Yick are just adorable as a pair. They don't have much in the way of character episodes, but instead help bring a bit of levity to this season with their wacky antics. Avoiding school bullies, trying to grow taller by studying upperclassmen, and going full detective to locate missing money. Another favorite aspect of the season does involve this duo. Yick is convinced that Mr. Radich has it out for him in episode 3 due to his terrible grades and being dubbed, "You the Disorganized." To test this theory, Arthur acquires through blackmail one of Stephanie's B+ papers from the previous year for Yick to copy and turn in. When the paper comes back with an A mark, Yick opts to continue testing Mr. Radich with more of Stephanie's papers. That is, until Radich recognizes the essay he read the year before. At first, Yick points the blame at his teacher for his problems, but soon has to realize that his terrible marks may be a result of how little effort he puts into his work. And when he turns in a paper with more than a glancing thought put in, not only does Radish recognize its quality, but he also admits fault for giving Yick a mean nickname. Both come away having learned something and resolve to be better going forward. There's a lot of these little lessons in real life that make seeing them portrayed in media very refreshing. Not every conflict is life or death or builds to a grand climax and ends with a life-changing moral. A large part of growing up is making tiny mistakes and seemingly incidental events like joining a club to be close to your crush. To subtract them from a narrative intending to portray a true slice of life is to make cookies without sugar. The end product may at the very least be interesting to look at, but ultimately fails in the intended goal. One more aspect I'd like to call attention to is the conclusion of the episode Rumor Has It. Rumors spread about Ms. Avery being gay, leading Caitlin to fear that she might be gay as well due to how much she loves her teacher and the dreams she's been having. Even though we find out the woman thought to be Miss Avery's lover is just a housemate and kissing is a thing she does with all her female friends, it's still uncertain whether she's gay or not. All we know for certain is that her housemate isn't her partner, and being unmarried isn't a way to determine someone's sexual preferences. It's not even stated where Caitlin stands on her own sexuality. By episode's end, she still could come out as a lesbian. Now, future seasons show that this isn't the case, but that's beside the point. What I love is that the writers were able to say it's okay for someone to question their sexuality and come out heterosexual without the message getting confused with, "It's okay, I was straight all along." Given the time period, this was probably the closest they come to saying homosexuality is okay without putting their show in danger of cancellation for having controversial agendas. Upon rewatch, the season is much better than I initially gave it credit for. Many of the problems shown do seem what some would describe as juvenile, but that's the point. Not every day in junior high is filled with suicide attempts or doing coke in the bathroom. I'm invested in this group of characters and can't wait to see how their stories progress for better or for worse. Thank you for watching. P.S. Snake is cool.